Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make this kind of cool comic book graphic novel kind of style within Photoshop. Now this tutorial is a lot more straightforward and a lot more simple than it seems, but it can be applied in so many different ways to so many different images, and could maybe even give you some cool kind of styles to play around with, like thumbnails and stuff. So if you do learn something new or do enjoy the video, please do leave a like on the video and consider subscribing for tutorials like this one every single week. But without further ado, let's get straight into the tutorial. Okay guys, so what you're going to want to do is open up a Photoshop document and get your image that you want to turn into this graphic novel kind of style, or have something you've created that you want to put into this kind of comic book style. If you have made something, make sure you duplicate everything and merge them down so they're all in one layer, or if you have an image, just make a copy of it so that if you don't like the effects or want to change some things, you can always come back to it and start fresh if you want to. So we're just going to lock the bottom layer and have the copy of it there. Once you're happy with your layer or the image that you've selected that you want to turn into this comic effect, what you want to do is right click on that layer and do convert to smart object. Then you want to come up the top here to filter. You want to go to sharpen and smart sharpen. Then you want to use these settings, or roughly these settings on here. Make sure your amount is on 500%, so slide that slider all the way to the right. Radius, I recommend using anywhere between 3 and 6%, but the heavier that it is, it kind of works better, because it almost, you'll see when we do the full effect, it gives it this kind of like halo kind of strokes effect around the edge, which is really nice for like defining different objects in the picture, as obviously they're all going to be either black or white. Reduce noise on 0%. And then remove Gaussian blur as well. And once you're happy with those settings, right, you just want to click OK. Then you'll see that underneath your layer now, you've got these things called smart filters. When you create a smart object, all your filters come down here, and you can change the opacity and the setting of them with the sliders here. So if you want to make it stronger or weaker, even after you've done it, you can come back and edit it. Just a great thing about making smart objects in Photoshop. Once we've done that, we're going to come back up to filter and go to filter gallery and click on that. So once you've got filter gallery open, what you're going to want to do is come down to sketch and click on halftone pattern. What we want to do is have the pattern type on line, the size on 1, and the contrast you can kind of decide how much you want, but I recommend about 10 usually works well. On this I'm going to turn it up to about 12. But you don't want the contrast to be too heavy, and you kind of want it to look a bit overexposed. If anything, you don't want to make it too dark. Then once we've done that, you're going to come down to the bottom of the filter thing here with this little square icon with the plus in it. This lets you add another effect, so we're going to click that. And then we're going to click on torn edges. Then what you want to do is drag the smoothness up to 15, the contrast up to 5, and the image balance is where you can kind of play around with it here and kind of get a look that you want. Usually I start off with around 30 and then go from there. I'm going to make this one a bit darker. I'm going to make it I'm going to go with 20. You can kind of see how it looks if you zoom out a lot. When you're zoomed in, you can't quite see the effect. When you zoom out, you kind of get the full effect of it. So I'm going to go with 20 for this one. And then what you want to do is add another effect. Go to texture, and you want to go on texturizer. You want our texture to be sandstone. Scaling to be 100%. And relief, you can kind of play around as much as you like. However, this kind of gives it that paper texture. I'm going to have mine on 4. And you want the light to be on the top, although you can also mess around this if you want the light to be coming from different directions. You can't really see it, but you might be able to see over here on the left. If I zoom in a little bit, you might be able to see when I change the light direction that it just changed where the lights and shadows are of the actual texture. So I'm going to leave it on top, and then we're going to click OK. And that is the kind of base effect done. Now, a lot of the time when I'm editing with this kind of style, I find parts of the image don't look quite right, like the contrast. Like some bits will be nice, like his face and his arm kind of here, but then the outside of the car is too overexposed, or the back of this car is too underexposed. So what you can do is hit Ctrl J on your keyboard in the layer to make a duplicate of it. And then if you actually double click on the words filter gallery here, it takes you back into the effects. And if you click on torn edges, you can adjust the image balance. If I turn this image balance down here so that you can actually see some detail outside of the car now, and hit OK, what you can then come down here and do is add a layer mask by clicking the rectangle with the circle cut out in it to make a layer mask. Press B to get on your brush tool, and make sure we've got a nice hard round brush, which you hold Alt on your keyboard, hold right click, drag right to increase the size or left to decrease the size, and then up to decrease hardness or down to increase hardness. So if you're down, it's going to be like a sharp edged circle, whereas if you drag it upwards and hardness is on 0%, it's going to be like a soft kind of blurry circle. We want that to be a nice hard edge, Make sure your color is black. When you click on the layer mask, it should automatically switch your colors so it's black and white or white and black. When you paint black on a layer mask, you'll see it erases the layer. So if I toggle both these layers off, see there's nothing. Now I'm painting them white, it paints it on. What you want to do is just have both the layers visible and then just mask out the areas that you don't want to be affected by the changes you've just done. So I only really want the front of the car to be affected by changes that I've just made. So now, as you can see, we've got a bit more detail at the front, and you can decide whether you like that or not. But that's one way to fix the kind of contrast difference when you're doing the image balance with the torn edges effect. This is the effect kind of in itself. However, if you want to take it one step further and make it look more like an actual comic book and stuff, what you can do, create a new layer, get the marquee selection tool, drag over the whole layer and come up to the top and click select, modify and contract. Tick this box that says apply effect at canvas bounds, which basically means at the edge of the layer it's going to still shrink it. And then we want to contract by 24 pixels. Now this document is 1280 by 720, so your thumbnail size. So obviously if you're using a bigger document, you're going to have to increase. If you're in a 1920 by 1080 document, you might want to do something like 36, for example. Or if you're in a smaller document, you might want to do 12, for example. That kind of thing. Just play around with the values and you can do that. Then what you want to do is right click somewhere inside this selection, so anywhere on the inside of the canvas really, and do select inverse. Then just make sure your foreground color is set to white and hit Alt backspace on your keyboard, and that will fill it with this white kind of border. If we double click on the layer that we've just made, bring up the layer styles panel, what you want to do is click on texture, which automatically toggles on the bevel and emboss setting. So what you want to do on that, you can just copy the settings that I've got on here, but I'll run them through you really quickly. Got pillow emboss, and you want the technique on smooth. We're going to have the size on 0%. We're going to have the direction on down, soften 0%, and these same kind of lighting effects. If you want to copy these exactly, just pause the video and copy them, and then unpause when you move on to the next step. So once we're happy with that, if you're using the newest version of Photoshop, underneath this grass folder in the textures patterns, you'll have this one on the right, this green one here. You click on that. What you want to do is have these settings 15 and 173, or what you can do is you can change the depth. It kind of makes the contrast the same as what you've got set for your document. However, if you're copying exactly the same as me, mine was -173, so I'm going to input that back. You can just play around with the scale and the depth to get the kind of same effect that you had when you did the sandstone texture with the filter gallery. But yeah, once you've kind of done that, you've got this comic book looking effect. And finally, I'm going to show you some really cool ways you can kind of take this idea a little bit further and make it more like that comic book style. You can add some kind of speed lines if it's like an intense thing, or you're using this for like a thumbnail style maybe. You can add some kind of speed lines to the edge and play around with that, give it the same kind of texture effects that we did on the actual border itself, make them a bit bigger. Something like that works really, really nicely. Or if you've got a more white kind of image, you can do black ones. Another thing you can do is add a box in the top left corner and add your text in there to give it kind of like a setting or something like that. This is to make it look more like an actual kind of comic book, or if you're making lots of different kind of grids of these, or like you're storyboarding something in a comic book style, this is a really cool effect that you can do. And finally, obviously you can just add speech bubbles now. There's all kinds of different speech bubbles and stuff you can use. You can give it that same texture that the border has and the rest of the page has to make it fit in, add this comic book style text, and it's a really nice way to kind of tie everything together. Or you can even combine the two and get some speed lines going on with this top kind of text, or you can even do it with a speech bubble and that kind of stuff. It all works really well, and this is a really fun style to play around with, so I recommend that you guys do. But yeah, that is it for today's video, guys. I had some real fun making this video and playing around with this style before when I was experimenting with video ideas. If you did learn something new or you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to leave a like, and please consider subscribing if you want more tutorials like this one every single week. We are slowly growing, and it would be really cool to hit 200 subscribers before the end of the year. So if you are new and you did enjoy the video, please hit subscribe. Other than that, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.